Under a bruised eye, the wedding bells echoed through the marble courtyard of Evervale Cathedral. Seraphina, the 23-year-old bride, reached trembling for the groom's hand, but Lord Theron, a 30-year-old nobleman clad in armor, pulled away coldly. "You were never the chosen one," he declared, his voice sharp and unforgiving. Gasps filled the pews. Her veil slipped from her hair and fell to the ground like a silent surrender. Her father, a stern man in his 60s, turned away in shame. The world she had built on fragile hopes shattered in an instant. Yet, in the crowd, a dark-haired 25-year-old man named Lucien caught her gaze. Once a shadow of her past, his voice broke the silence. "She is still mine." His words thundered louder than the storm brewing above. The weight of silence after the shattering moment was suffocating. Seraphina stood frozen, the echoing murmurs of the crowd fading beneath the relentless pounding of her heart. Each breath she took was shallow and jagged. From the back of the cathedral, Lucien moved forward with purpose, his every step a defiant drum beat against the stone floor. No one dared block his path. His eyes, fierce and tender, all at once met hers. "Why now?" she whispered, voice trembling with disbelief. "Because they stole everything from you," Lucien answered quietly, "and I refuse to let them take your soul." The crowd parted reluctantly as he extended his hand, a silent promise. Seraphina's fingers twitched, memories of childhood promises flooding back. Long before crowns and betrayals, she had belonged to him. As Lucien reached Seraphina, her fingers hovered just above his outstretched hand. The murmurs in the cathedral faded into a low hum. Memories flooded her mind. The secret meetings beneath the ancient oak, whispered dreams of escape, and a childhood pact sealed in innocence. "You said we'd always find each other," Seraphina murmured, voice breaking. Lucien's grip was gentle but unwavering. "I promised, and I'm here." The tension between the life she was losing and the past she never truly left twisted in her chest. Around them noble guests whispered, some in disbelief, others with dawning understanding. The world had changed, but some bonds endured beyond all betrayal. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the fragile moment. Lord Theron stepped forward, fury blazing in his eyes. "This is treason!" he shouted, voice echoing off stone walls. "She belongs to the crown, not to a forgotten shadow." Seraphina's heart clenched. Lucien stood his ground, meeting Theron's challenge without fear. "She belongs to herself," he said quietly but firmly. The cathedral trembled with tension. Ancient stones bearing witness to a war, not just for a throne, but for a soul. Seraphina's world was no longer defined by titles or expectations. It was defined by the courage to reclaim her truth. Seraphina's breath caught as the cathedral doors slammed open, and a contingent of royal guards stormed in, their armor gleaming under flickering torchlight. The murmurs turned to gasps, the air thick with uncertainty. "By order of the crown," their captain declared, "Seraphina is hereby banished for betrayal." Her father's eyes were cold as steel, betrayal cutting deeper than any sword. Lucien stepped protectively beside her, his jaw set, eyes blazing with defiance. This was no longer just a wedding ruined, it was the start of a war to reclaim what was lost. The storm outside broke, rain pelting the stained glass like tears of the gods themselves. After the storm had passed, Seraphina found herself exiled to a crumbling stone keep on the outskirts of the kingdom. The cold walls echoed with silence and memories she could not escape. Lucien stood by her side, his protective presence a beacon in the desolation. "They think banishment breaks the spirit," he said softly, "but it only sharpens the fire within." Seraphina's fingers traced the faded tapestry hanging on the wall, images of past glories and lost hope. Her heart ached for what was taken, but she refused to surrender. In the shadows of exile, she vowed to reclaim her place, not as a pawn of power, but as a queen of her own destiny. Days passed with the slow weight of captivity. Seraphina wandered the keep's empty halls, her thoughts spiraling through pain and determination. One night, Lucien approached with a map worn by time and secrecy. "This is where they hide the truth," he whispered, tracing a route through forgotten forests and abandoned ruins. "If we find it, we can undo their lies." Her eyes flashed with renewed hope. The fire in her chest burned brighter than ever. They began to plan, hearts united by a promise to unearth the past, to defy the fate forced upon them, and to reclaim what was stolen. In the dim light of the keep's hearth, Seraphina and Lucien shared memories of a forgotten past, secret laughter beneath the oak tree, whispered promises carried by the wind. "They tried to erase us," Seraphina said quietly, "but they cannot erase what is true." Lucien nodded, eyes fierce. Their bond, forged in childhood innocence and tempered by betrayal, became the fortress no exile could breach. As shadows danced on stone walls, they plotted their first step toward freedom, hearts intertwined by hope and defiance. The following morning, under a pale gray sky, Seraphina and Lucien slipped quietly through the keep's ancient gates. The world outside was wild and unwelcoming, but freedom tasted sweet on the cool morning air. Every step through the tangled forest was a step back to themselves. Lucien glanced at her with a fierce smile. "This is only the beginning." Seraphina's breath caught at the sight of the towering trees and the promise they held. She was no longer a prisoner of fate. She was a warrior reclaiming her story. As night fell, they reached the ruins marked on the map, remnants of a forgotten castle swallowed by ivy and shadow. The air was thick with history and secrets waiting to be uncovered. Seraphina's fingers traced the crumbling stone, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Here lies the truth," Lucien said, voice barely a whisper. Together, they stepped into the darkness, ready to confront the past that had cast them aside. In that ancient silence, the first spark of rebellion ignited, a promise that they would not be forgotten. Beneath the moon's cold gaze, Seraphina and Lucien ventured deeper into the ruins, their footsteps muffled by moss and crumbling stone. The air was thick with whispers of forgotten betrayals and lost kings. Lucien's voice broke the silence. "These walls hide the secrets they fear." Seraphina's heart pounded as they uncovered a hidden chamber, ancient scripts etched in shadows. "This is where it begins," she said, tracing the faded symbols with trembling fingers. The past was alive here, ready to bleed into their present. Every secret revealed was a step toward reclaiming her stolen fate, but also a reminder that the enemy's grip was closer than she dared imagine. The ancient scripts revealed a shocking truth. Seraphina's lineage was not as it seemed. She was not merely a pawn, but the rightful heir to a forgotten throne usurped by Lord Theron's family. The weight of betrayal settled heavy on her shoulders. Lucien's eyes met hers, fierce with unwavering loyalty. "They rewrote history to erase you," he said, "but the truth cannot stay buried forever." Seraphina clenched her fists, her resolve hardening like the stones around them. This revelation ignited a fire within her, a fierce desire not only to reclaim her name but to topple the lies built upon it. Outside, shadows moved with silent intent. Lord Theron's spies had tracked their escape, closing in like vultures circling the remnants of their shattered power. Seraphina's breath hitched as Lucien whispered, "They know." Panic threatened to take hold, but she swallowed it hard. "Then we move faster." The ruins became a maze of peril and hope. Every rustle, every crack of twig was a reminder that freedom came at a cost. Yet even as danger pressed, Seraphina's spirit burned brighter, fueled by betrayal, sharpened by loss, and driven by a love that refused to die. A sudden clash shattered the stillness. The spies attacked with ruthless precision. Lucien drew his blade, moving with practiced grace to shield Seraphina. "Run," he commanded, eyes fierce but filled with pain. Seraphina stumbled but kept pace, adrenaline masking the sting of fear. The forest became a battleground of shadows and steel, echoes of betrayal ringing louder than ever. Each step was a fight to survive, each breath a promise to return stronger. Their bond, tested by fire, was the only light cutting through the darkness of betrayal closing in. Breath ragged, hearts pounding, they reached the forest edge as dawn painted the sky in hues of blood and gold. Seraphina turned to Lucien, eyes shining with fierce gratitude and unspoken promises. "This is just the beginning," she said. Lucien nodded. "Together, we will rewrite their story." As the first light broke through the trees, they vanished into the wild unknown. Two souls bound by fate, betrayal, and an unyielding will to reclaim what was lost. The war for truth had begun. The morning mist clung to the valley as Seraphina and Lucien arrived at a hidden encampment nestled between towering cliffs. The air was thick with tension and whispered secrets. Seraphina's heart quickened as familiar faces emerged from the shadows, allies she thought lost to time. Among them was Elias, an older warrior who once swore loyalty to her family. "You're alive," he said gruffly, eyes filled with relief. "We've waited for this moment." The truth was no longer theirs alone to bear. Together they forged a fragile alliance, ready to face the dark forces that sought to erase Seraphina's name. The war for the throne had gained new champions. Inside the camp's dim tent, Seraphina spread the ancient scroll before the gathered leaders. Their faces were etched with skepticism and hope. "This changes everything," murmured a young strategist named Mara. "The crown's lies run deep." Lucien's steady voice cut through the doubt. "We have proof. We have the will." Seraphina's eyes shone with fierce determination. "We will take back what was stolen, not through war alone, but by unmasking their deceit." Plans were drawn, alliances formed, and a fragile hope blossomed in the midst of uncertainty. This was more than rebellion. It was redemption. But not all were ready to accept the truth. Word of Seraphina's survival and claims spread like wildfire through the kingdom's courts. Lord Theron, cloaked in shadow and fury, convened his council. "She threatens everything we built," he growled. "Find her. Destroy the rebellion before it ignites." His advisors nodded, fear and ambition entwined. Meanwhile, spies slipped through cities and villages, sowing doubt and hunting for the exiled queen. Seraphina's journey was shadowed by betrayal on every side, but her resolve remained unbroken. The closer they came to justice, the deadlier the game. In a quiet moment away from plotting and plans, Seraphina found solace beneath the ancient oak where childhood memories bloomed. Lucien stood beside her, his gaze steady. "We are not just fighting for a crown," she whispered, "but for every truth they tried to bury." He took her hand, fingers intertwining like a lifeline. The weight of their journey pressed heavy, but in that silent forest, hope flickered brighter than the looming darkness. Their bond was a beacon, a promise that even in the deepest night, dawn awaited. As twilight fell, the encampment buzzed with preparation and whispered prayers. The rebellion was no longer a secret. It was a movement. Seraphina stood atop a rocky outcrop, looking out over the gathering forces. Her voice, strong and unwavering, carried through the air. "Tonight we reclaim our future. Tonight we fight for truth, for justice, for all who have been cast aside." The crowd responded with fierce cries, the flames of their resolve reflected in her eyes. The moment of reckoning was near, and no force could silence their roar. The dawn broke cold and gray over the battlefield, where Seraphina and her allies gathered, armor glinting under the muted light. The air was thick with tension and unspoken fears. Seraphina's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Today, we fight not for vengeance, but for justice." Her eyes scanned the faces of her loyal warriors, their resolve mirrored in her own heart. Lucien stood beside her, sword sheathed but ready. The clash ahead was not only of steel, but of truth and destiny. As banners unfurled and war cries rose, Seraphina felt the weight of every sacrifice, knowing this was the moment that would decide their fates. The battle erupted with thunderous fury, clashing swords, cries of valor, and the chaos of war unfolding beneath storm-heavy skies. Seraphina moved through the fray like a force of nature, her every strike precise and fierce. Lucien fought beside her, a steadfast guardian. The enemy was relentless, but so was the fire burning within them. Amidst the blood and mud, Seraphina's thoughts flashed to the kingdom's lies and broken promises. For truth, she whispered fiercely, each breath a vow. The battlefield was a tempest, but in its heart was a hope that could not be shattered. The tide of battle shifted when Lord Theron himself appeared, imposing and cruel. His presence sent a ripple of fear through the ranks. Seraphina met his gaze with unyielding defiance. "This ends today," she declared, stepping forward. The two locked eyes, a clash of past wounds and present fury. Lucien stayed close, ready to defend. The air crackled with tension as steel met steel in a duel that was more than just fight. It was the collision of destiny and betrayal. Each strike echoed the years of pain, the stolen future, and the fierce hope for redemption. Bloodied and weary, Seraphina staggered but refused to fall. Lucien's voice pierced the chaos. "You are not alone." With renewed strength, she pushed back against Lord Theron's onslaught. Around them the battle's roar faded into a fierce silence, as if the world held its breath. Seraphina's sword found its mark, and Theron faltered, the weight of truth crashing down on him. The enemy's facade cracked, revealing the fragility beneath power and lies. In that moment, Seraphina was not just a warrior, she was the embodiment of justice reclaimed. As Lord Theron collapsed, silence swept across the battlefield. Seraphina lowered her sword, breath ragged but victorious. The soldiers on both sides watched, stunned, as the rightful queen stood tall amidst the ruin. Lucien stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is our dawn," he said softly. Seraphina's gaze swept the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight pierced the storm clouds. The war was not over, but the path to justice was clear. The crown had fallen, and with it, the shadows of betrayal. A new chapter began, written by those who refused to be broken. The dawn of peace was fragile and uncertain. Seraphina stood in the grand hall of the reclaimed palace, her gaze heavy with the weight of what had been lost, and what was to come. "We have won the battle," she said softly, voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "But the war for our future is just beginning." The court's whispers fluttered around her like restless shadows. Lucien stood silently by her side, a steady anchor amidst the shifting tides of power. Together they faced the daunting task of rebuilding a kingdom fractured by lies, betrayal, and bloodshed. Seraphina knew that true victory required more than a crown, it required healing. As days turned to weeks, Seraphina walked among her people, in village squares and crowded markets, listening to their stories of suffering and resilience. Her heart ached with the weight of their pain, but also blossomed with hope. "We will rebuild," she promised, "not as rulers above, but as guardians beside." Lucien accompanied her, his protective presence a comfort to many. Each handshake, each shared smile was a thread weaving a new tapestry of trust. The kingdom's wounds were deep, but the spirit of its people burned bright. Together they planted seeds of renewal in the fertile soil of hardship. Yet, peace was fragile, and not everyone embraced the change. Hidden enemies lurked in the shadows, old powers scheming to reclaim lost control. Rumors spread like wildfire, sowing discord among the newly united. Seraphina's nights were restless, filled with whispered threats and shadowed faces. Lucien's vigilant eyes missed nothing, but even he could not shield her from the sting of betrayal within their ranks. Trust became a precious commodity, and every ally was weighed against the risk of treachery. In the fragile dawn of peace, the scars of war still ran deep. In the quiet sanctuary of the palace gardens, Seraphina found moments of solace with Lucien. "We carry the weight of all we've lost," she murmured, tracing patterns on the ancient stone bench. He nodded, his hand covering hers. "But also the strength to carry it forward." Their bond deepened, tempered by trials and shared dreams of a better future. Yet the looming threat of betrayal hung over them, a constant shadow in the fading light. They both knew the road ahead was uncertain, but together they would face whatever darkness dared to challenge their hard-won peace. As twilight settled, a secret council convened in the palace's deepest chambers. Whispers spoke of a conspiracy to topple Seraphina's reign. "We must act swiftly," Lucien said, eyes sharp with resolve. Seraphina's voice was steel, For our kingdom's future, we will root out the darkness, no matter the cost. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but her will was unbreakable. In the stillness of the night, they prepared to face the final trials that would define not only their reign, but the soul of the kingdom itself. The night air hung heavy with stars as Seraphina stood alone on the palace balcony, a silhouette framed against the vast canvas of the heavens. Her flowing gown whispered softly in the cool breeze, each fold catching the pale moonlight like a fragile shard of hope. Below, the city of Evervale lay quiet, bathed in slumber, and the faint glow of lanterns flickering like fireflies caught in the night. Her breath came steady, yet beneath it simmered a storm of memories, the agony of betrayal, the sting of exile, the long nights spent whispering promises to a future that once seemed impossible. "I never sought this crown," she murmured to the wind, "but I will bear it for those who believed in me when the world turned away." Behind her, footsteps approached silently. Lucien's presence was calm yet unyielding, a shadow that had weathered every storm beside her. "You belong to no one but yourself," he said softly, voice like a balm on a battered soul. She turned, eyes shining with quiet strength and gratitude. Together, they faced the uncertain horizon, a kingdom reborn from ashes, and a love tempered in fire. The past was a shadow, but the future awaited, unwritten and full of promise. The great hall was alive with the murmurs and clatter of a kingdom on the cusp of rebirth. Noble lords, ladies, and common folk alike gathered beneath towering vaulted ceilings, adorned with intricate tapestries telling tales of ancient glories and sacrifices. Seraphina ascended the marble steps toward her throne, each step resonating with the weight of destiny fulfilled. Her voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Let this be a reign not of fear or ambition, but of truth, justice, and unity." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, cheers rippling like waves of hope, washing away years of despair. Faces lit by flickering chandeliers and the glow of stained glass windows reflected awe and renewed faith. Beside her, Lucien stood silent but proud, the steadfast guardian of her heart and her cause. Their hands brushed, a fleeting touch carrying unspoken promises of unwavering loyalty. Though the road ahead was uncertain, the flame of hope blazed brightly in the eyes of the gathered kingdom. A new era was dawning, fragile, fierce, and filled with promise. But shadows, as ever, lingered at the edges of light. In the palace's deepest corridors, far from the revelry, a secret council convened cloaked in darkness and deceit. Hooded figures whispered in huddled clusters, voices low and venomous. "Her reign threatens the old order," hissed a figure swathed in shadow, fingers curling into fists. "We cannot allow this fragile peace to endure." The seeds of rebellion, sown with bitter whispers and poisoned promises, spread insidiously through the marble halls and gardens. Yet Seraphina's sharp eyes missed nothing. Through loyal spies and Lucien's unwavering vigilance, each plot was met with swift resolve. The fight had changed shape, from open battlefields to clandestine wars of wit and will. Seraphina understood now that true leadership demanded not only courage to wield the sword, but also the strength to navigate the labyrinth of betrayal. The coming days would test every ounce of her resilience. In the quiet sanctuary of her private chambers, Seraphina sought solace from the ceaseless demands of throne and kingdom. Lucien's hand brushed softly against her cheek, a touch as gentle as the fading light filtering through the lace curtains. "You are more than the crown," he murmured, eyes shimmering with unspoken love and unwavering devotion. "You are the heart of this kingdom." Tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of release and hope. The weight of the past lifted, if only for a moment, replaced by the fragile promise of peace. Their bond, forged in childhood innocence and tempered through fire, was her anchor. Here, away from the eyes of courtiers and conspirators, they found refuge in shared dreams. The future remained uncertain, but together they would face every shadow and claim the dawn. As the final scene unfolded beneath the ancient oak tree, where childhood secrets were sworn and promises made, Seraphina and Lucien stood hand in hand. The golden hour bathed the world in soft amber light, leaves whispering stories in the gentle breeze. Seraphina inhaled deeply, the scent of earth and blossoms filling her senses. "I belong to no one but myself, and to those who believe in what we fight for," she declared, voice steady and strong. Lucien's smile was a quiet vow, their joined hands a testament to love that had endured exile, betrayal, and war. Their journey had come full circle, from rejection and loss to belonging and hope. The kingdom, once fractured, now blossomed beneath their watchful eyes. This was not an end, but a beginning, a story of courage, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that define us all.